Hey there, folks. I'm Matt Hansen,
And I'm John Johnson.
and you're listening to
Planes, Trains, and Comic Books.
the podcast where we discuss favorites we've reread, both classic and new comics we want to read, and everything else in between.
And here's the comic we picked this week.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Planes, Trains, and Comic Books. Today, we are reading a book that no one will shut up about. This is a book that...
This is a saga of its own for our channel because we've kept hearing about this book forever.
Yeah, and everybody loves it. And by nature, I'm a contrarian, so that means I automatically am skeptical of these people's claims that it is good.
I was super pumped for this one. I was excited that it won the poll because I have wanted to read this for a while. I've heard so many good things. There was a Funko Pop of a character that's a little harp seal named Gus that I guess is in a future one because he wasn't in this issue. That I was like, he's fucking adorable. What is he from? Saga? Oh, okay, I guess I want to check that out and read that now.
Nice. Well, yeah, we'll get to the inners of this first volume. But you know, I was, besides being contrarian, I was predispositioned to like this because I like Brian K. Vaughan, who's the writer. You know, he did Y the Last Man, which I love. He did Runaways, which I love. He did a lot of books, a lot of Batman stories. What else has he written that I'm a fan of? I don't know. He's just generally a guy that he did a whole run of Swamp Thing, volume 3 of Swamp Thing. So, you know, he's just a guy that I generally like his writing style, so I'm willing to give him a try. And then I don't think I've ever seen anything drawn by Fiona. I want to say Fiona Apple. It's Fiona Staples. Fiona Staples. So this was like the first thing I've seen of her work, which was good. I think, you know, people like were talking about this like it was like the next coming of whatever art or something. I was like, I mean, it was fine. It looked like a modern day comic, which looked like modern day comics. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it. Like when I look at old 80s artwork or like 90s artwork and there's so much like detail and rendering, and then I look at this and it's like, okay, like it's all digital. Or at least it looks digital. I don't know if it is digital. Like, I don't know if she draws ink and pen on paper, but she, like, whoever colors it definitely makes it look digitally, you know, drawn or whatever. So, but that's because they're using digital colors and everything. But I don't know. I thought it was fine. Everything was good, but it just didn't like blow my socks off the way everybody was talking about it. Like, I remember 5 years ago, people were like, she is the it person right now. I'm like, I don't see it personally, but that's like a taste thing, I think. So, you know, what'd you think of the art?
I can see that. I liked it. I mean, there's definitely some interesting details, especially in some of the weirder scenes. I'll give it that. Like, there was some stuff that she really went for it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
None of the art was bad. I enjoyed it. It was part of the story for sure. But yeah, like you said, nothing really blew me away.
Yeah, nothing was bad. I'm not saying anything was bad. I just meant like the way people were talking about it. I was expecting like, you know, I don't know, one of those masters like Bernie Wrightson or something, you know, where people, you see it and you're just like, holy shit, who is this? You know, and then when I look at this, I'm like, oh, it just looks like something's killing the children, or, you know, one of those kind of books from nowadays. That's like, oh, people talk about it and it looks good, it's fine, but like it's just not anything unique to me personally. So that's what I was like, oh, okay. I just meant that. But this book starts off interestingly. What did you think of, like, the first page is just her giving birth, but she's saying like, you know, am I shitting? It feels like I'm shitting. Those are the first words of the comic. So it's pretty like,
and then
this is like readers beware, good. Right?
Yeah, and then it also feels good. Like it's a very it was very right off the bat, like, oh, okay, this is gonna be different.
Right, yeah. Well, it's different, but I mean, like, obviously this is a mature comic from Image or whatever, and like you can pretty much do anything you want like this. Anything. I think they don't publish pornographic books, obviously, but like this is just like giving birth, and there's like breastfeeding. They talk about sexual stuff or whatever. Mature themes, I guess, is what you would call it. So, Um, but yeah, like it starts off with giving birth, and we also get like the one of the things that I didn't like about the this book was the narration of the baby, because the baby, I mean, me and John had a slight disagreement about this, but I think the baby is the main character because she's narrating the whole thing, and it seems like it's her from like a future point talking about her parents. So like the first actual line is narration from her saying, this is how an idea becomes real," and it's like, you know, we're following, I guess, her life story. That's why I think she's the main character. John was like, no, she's not the main character. They are. I'm like, okay, well,
Well, but from my standpoint of like, at least for this first one, like,
right for the
yeah,
first arc, obviously, but
yeah, like I'm not saying that she doesn't become like a main character, but for this first one, like, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call her the main
right.
character.
But John, as it's implied in the name of the book, this is a saga, and and
Sure,
I'm
but
sure
that's what
that
I.
will get explained
Yes,
later.
yes, but like if I'm watching a movie and part one has a narration of a character that is like, yeah, being a baby or being born in it, I wouldn't call her the like the main character of this story. I would say it was, whoever
Okay,
of this. Then part two, maybe she's the main character. Yeah,
all
but
right, all right. Well, anyway, the two characters we're following, the two main characters of this book, as John put it, are the parents of this child, and their names. The father's name is Marco, and the mother's name is Alana, and or Elena. I don't know how you pronounce
yeah,
it,
I
but
did that. Elena or Alana, yeah.
yeah. And I mean, she looks like a normal Earth female, except she has wings on her back, and he looks like a normal Earth man, except he has goat ears and horns, or like sheep ears and horns. So like that was one of the things about this that I was like, is everybody's pretty humanish looking, you know what I mean? Like at least these main characters. They're all like different alien races, but these two at least look fairly humanish. So I was like, okay. I guess we're going a little light on the sci-fi, we'll call it. That's my take on it, at least. A little light sci-fi.
Light sci-fi.
Yeah. And that's like kind of shown a little bit later. Like that's one of my main gripes with this book was the sci-fi wasn't as hard as I want it to be, and at the same time it was like weirdly informational, like a hard sci-fi, but it was like information that to me doesn't matter. Like you're gonna throw names of planets and solar systems out, but then like you don't need to know any of that. It's kind of like the book is focusing on their relationship and the people in the scenes, not like the world building aspect, at least at this moment in this book. I could be wrong. Maybe later on it gets all like, oh, if you had not paid attention to the name of that planet that they mentioned in book one, in issue 40 they mention it again and it's very important. So like, maybe I'm wrong and they world build the hell out of it later. But in this first volume, to me, like it was a little weak on a little light on the world building as far as like for me to take it like serious. You know what I mean? Um, like we were talking about this, like Star Wars. One of the things that I like about Star Wars, even though I don't really like Star Wars that much, is the world building. We're like, oh, when you're on Tatooine, you're like, I get Tatooine. There's these fucking little people, Jawas and stuff. There's like this bar. There's like all this stuff. Or actually, that's not Tatooine. Whatever. You know what I mean? Is that Tatooine? I don't even know because it's not my thing.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
yes,
you're
yes.
gonna correct me, John. Let me know what
I'm
I'm
glad
wrong.
this is recorded because yeah, Matt will shit on my Star Wars stuff all the time, and
Yes.
I always want to. That's the one thing. I've been friends with this guy for over 10 years, or 15 years, and every time I'm like want to bring up something like I saw this new cool Star Wars thing, he's like, yeah, I don't
Yeah. I'm sorry, John. I don't care.
care.
But
It's okay.
but I get it. I mean, I get why people like it. It just doesn't do anything for me. But one of the things I like is that, when I'm watching even like, episode 1 and there's the pod race scene, everything feels real. Like it seems to matter that Sebulba is the way he is and this other guy is the way they are, and Watto is a haggler. Like, I believe it. You know what I mean? Like, and this just seemed like everything was kind of a place filler name. It could have been called anything. We just threw a word out there. It didn't seem like it mattered to the world necessarily. So,
And one of the things I kind of threw in there with that is that you know alien languages and like having all these different places, you have like a different culture for real feeling. And like they get around like, you're not understanding by having a, droid that translates everything. That's fine.
Right.
That's a technology, right? But like, yeah, like in this, it's like everybody can pretty much understand everybody. There's not like, there's a little bit of alien language, but for the most part, like everybody is pretty much like, oh yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what they look like, or it's like everybody speaks the same language and can understand what's going on in any given time, which is fine. I get it. It's like I said, it's like this is like introduction sci-fi, I guess. I would call it, not to be that guy, not to be the stuck-up sci-fi guy, because I'm not really a giant sci-fi nerd. The stuff I like, I want it to be. I want to really feel like I'm in this world, and throw some weird words at me, like especially like I love like Snow Crash and kind of like the cyberpunk sci-fi stuff, like Neuromancer. And in that, I will have to read those books multiple times because I'm like, I don't know what this word means. Like, this is a made-up word that they made up for this thing, and I can't quite comprehend it, but I like the idea of it. And I like that they threw it out there, and we're like, you're just going to have to figure it out, boy. And it's like, okay, cool. That's fun to me. Whereas this was like, oh, I feel like this could have taken place on Earth, and I would be fine with it, like this could have been about the Civil War, like you know what I mean? Like this could translate to a lot of different types of stories, in settings and places, and you just change the names to whatever those would be, and it would work. At least that's how this first volume felt. I could be wrong, like later on, like I said, about the world building thing, but anyway, back to the story. Like I said, the baby gets born right at the beginning. They don't know what to name her initially. She gets named later on in this volume, but it is a girl, and they're all happy. We find out though, like almost immediately, that these parents are, like I said, in the middle of a civil war. Each one is on the other side. It's a little bit like Romeo and Juliet, where it's like the Montagues and the Capulets. It's like warring factions, except on a universal global scale or whatever, with armies and shit, right? So and we've seen similar like I said, Romeo and Juliet's a similar story, but just on a smaller scale. But yeah, so like immediately as she's born, all of a sudden we get like this is her people, right? She is the people of Landfall. This was like one of the things I'm like, I'm never going to remember these names of the places and stuff. So she is of the people of Landfall. They have little wings. They fly around. I imagine they're kind of like Hawk Girl or Hawk Man or whatever. And like, they're Thanagara, right? And then, Ran is the other people. And, but yeah, he's from the other people that are, I don't know.
It's a moon.
It's a moon. So the idea is like, she's from the aggressors, I guess you'd call them, and he's from the defenders, right? So that's their dynamic. But she was a guard in his prison cell, and then they fell in love, I guess, and then escaped. And so the sheriff or whatever they call him, this guy shows up. His name's Baron Robot the 23rd. And he's with
Prince Robot the 4th.
No, this guy, this first guy,
big one. Yes,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
This first guy is Baron Robot the 23rd. He's like here with a bunch of guards or whatever, and he's like, you gotta surrender. We caught you. Come out. And it seems like not everybody knows exactly what's happening exactly. Like they don't know that. Like they think maybe he kidnapped her. They don't know how they escaped, but they just know that they're tracking them. And they cut through this door. They come in. They're like, you're under arrest. But then right as they say, like, they're going to take them and, kill everybody except the baby, I guess. Actually, they're kind of like, this first group is pretty like, we don't care about the baby because they don't have orders yet. But they're like, it's a mixed baby, and that's bad. So there's like a bit of racism going on here, right?
Yeah.
But then right in the middle of this room, like the other, we'll call them horned people, because they're not all rams, but they have antlers or horns of some kind. Like some of them have like rhino horns and stuff. So like, I was like, okay, we got gazelle horns and It kind of looks like Sweet Tooth. I don't know if you've seen that show or read that book. Like the main guy, like they're wizards too. They have magic, whereas like the coalition, they seem to be like technology based. These like horned people are like mages or something, and so they have magic. They kill all these guys quickly, all these coalition guys, and they get killed too in the process. And there's a big massacre in this room, but who's left but Marco, Elena, and the child? And then the guy that sold them out to the coalition was there, but he was dying, and he's like, "Here's a map. Here's this map." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "I sold you out for this. Like, if it's any consolation, like here's a map for treasure, basically." And so, is that what it was? It was a treasure map, right? Or at least they called it a treasure map. They said it was like a treasure map. I don't know if it was like why he had the map.
Basically that's what my understanding.
That's what you got. Okay.
Yeah.
Because they don't find a treasure in it here. They just follow it to places that they need to go. So, but yeah. So then we get like a whole breakdown of like, oh, here's landfall and here's the moon, called Wreath, and the Wreath is where the horned people come from, and landfall is where the winged people came from. And yes, once again, this was all like you might as well just say like placeholder moon, placeholder planet. None of it mattered to me like, reading it this time because it didn't seem to have any effect on the world to me. But that's just me. That's how I don't know. Did you feel like that? Like the world building didn't matter in this?
Yeah, I didn't really feel any connection to any of the plants or anything. It didn't really feel like I get like landfall and wreath, like they went back to that enough that I was like, okay, so there's like the upper class society, and this is kind of like it's like it was like Metropolis and or Gotham, like that's kind of like the seedy area or supposedly feeling seedy, and yeah, they're at war. So,
Mm-hmm.
but that was about the only like planetary stuff that felt like it had any importance.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the characters are what this book is about, right? Like the places don't really matter other than just a backdrop for what the characters are doing. So at least that's how this first volume felt. And that's what this book is about. It's a family drama, about this, star-crossed lovers and their child, and they're trying to escape this war that's going on, right? So, pretty standard, like story fare. There's a lot of stories that have those similar themes. And I guess like the difference between those and these is like just the looks of the characters and stuff, right? It's like, oh, they're crazy looking because the bad guy has a TV for a head, and like it's okay. So, but to me, I'm like, well, you could just have like a Napoleon hat on, and it's the same, like whatever. It doesn't matter to me, like that they draw them weird, because it doesn't seem to matter. Like I said, the bad guy does have like a TV for a head, like the ruling class of landfall seem to be these TV people, we'll call them, or screen heads, maybe. I don't know. What would you call them? Screen heads.
I like screen heads. Not you said I was calling them TV people, but yeah.
Okay,
like
screen heads work. We'll call them screen heads.
That sounds like the racist name that they get called.
That's what I'm calling them because they're assholes. So who cares?
Heads.
Yeah, and so they we get introduced to the main guy. After we've seen the couple. They're in this gore of filled room because there was a big massacre, and they like they're trying to get out of this city. Then we cut to the main bad guy, and he's having sex with a screen face woman, and he's in his lavish room or whatever with nice sheets and everything. And what was his name, John?
Prince Robot the Fourth.
Prince Robot the Fourth. So to me, that's a fairly generic name as well.
Yep.
Prince Robot, right? So, but I mean, I think that's the point. Like, this isn't supposed to be a hard sci-fi necessarily. This is supposed to be like super able for you to just pick up and read and not have to really worry about the minutia, but we see him. He learns about this massacre that happened, and then he also learns like, okay, one of our people broke out a prisoner, and now they're on escape, and he's like, we'll just kill them. And he's like, well, it's more complicated than that because they have a child, and the mixed child is a thing. They don't say why yet, but I don't know. It seemed like there's a reason because the Prince TV face or whatever, he was like, "Oh my God, like we have to, but you can kill them, but like you must bring the child to me." So I don't know why she's special or not, but do you know why? Did you have a idea?
Not yet. No, I assumed it was something like oh, like those two people shouldn't mate or something like that. But I didn't.
Well, yeah, but then you would just want to kill it, right? It seems like maybe he thinks she's special in some way, or maybe there's a prophecy or something that comes out later. I don't fucking know. There's always one of those kind of things, right? Like, oh, they just said, or maybe like, oh, she will be able to rally the people to band together against us, the rich, assholes with the rich screen faces. So, yeah, I don't know why yet. They haven't said because obviously the baby is a baby in this one, so we don't get too much about her mythology or whatever, or like what mythology is around her. But in this, she's just a baby, and it's just about their love, like the parents' love for her and each other. So, and also like in this issue, the first issue, we learn about like, okay, obviously the mom doesn't have any trouble with violence too much. She does have like a stun gun because the husband Marco is like, I don't want to kill anybody anymore. So he's kind of taken like a vow
made
of
a
peace.
vow.
Yeah, made a vow of peace. He carries a blade, and later on he does use it, but he only uses it to chop people's arms off because that's not murder. And so but then like we find out later, okay, he took a blade of or a pact of peace or whatever, like a vow of peace, and so he doesn't want to kill anybody. So, but they're on the run from like horrible people, right? So obviously it's kind of important that that violence would come up, right? Like you might need to use it sometime. But one thing I did like is that he did stick to his guns, except for the arm cutting off thing. But that did make him get sick. So like at that point he like broke his sword or whatever. So it was like, okay, he's like serious about this vow. I like characters that have a code and like stick to it really hard, even though it puts them in hard positions. So like that's why I like the Question and Rorschach and shit, because I'm like, okay, like I appreciate that it could be a crazy code. Like I might not agree with the code, but even like bad guys who have a code, I like them. Like Anton Chigurh from No Country for Old Men. I'm like, he's got a code, and I love it. It's a terrible code, but like I love that he's got like these rules he made up for himself with like a coin flip or whatever. And
he can still be a terrible person, but he has rules.
yes, exactly. And the rules give it like a safeness or something, right? Like he's not just chaotic evil. He's evil, of course, but like So I like rules for everybody. It gives them like an interesting character usually because it will put them in hard situations, right? If someone's coming after you with a gun or a knife, I mean, normally people would shoot them, but if you've taken a vow of nonviolence, well, what are you going to do? It puts you in an interesting story situation, right? And you have to kind of like figure that out as a character, and as the reader, it's interesting to figure that out too. So, but part of, it's not just the government going after, or these like screenheads going after them. They put a bounty on the parents for killing them, and then the child for bringing it back alive. And so we meet like the first bounty hunter, who's named The Will. It seems all the bounty hunters are named The Somethings. And The Will was where I was like, oh, this guy's kind of cool. You liked him too, right, John?
Yeah, the Will was probably my most, like, the character I was most interested in this story. Like, oh, again, he kind of seems like he has some kind of code or
He's
something.
got a code for sure, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, he definitely was the most intriguing to me, even though he's obviously like some kind of, he was a mercenary, but he seemed like obviously.
Well, that's fine. Conan's a mercenary too. I like Conan.
Boba
But
Fett is a mercenary.
Boba Fett, he's bad. A lot of mercenaries are badasses, So one thing I love about this guy is he's got a cat that talks to him and stuff, but it's like it tells you if people are lying. So I thought that was a fun like whenever someone would talk around the cat, the Will would look at the cat and be like, "Huh?" And he's like, "Oh, he's fine." Like he's telling the truth. It's like, "Oh, okay, cool." So like I thought that was a fun character. But yeah, we're introduced to him. Then we find out there's not only one bounty hunter who's going after them. There's a bunch, and one of them is a bounty hunter called the Slay, and they have some kind of history or past. So he initially is like, I'll just let the Slay take care of them because everybody knows if she's after you, you're dead, right? So, and that's pretty much how the first chapter ends. We leave with the parents and the baby on the run, getting out of the city, and they're trying to get to some forest that has spaceships.
Yeah, it looks like maybe there's something that's going to take them away from there.
Yeah, it's called like a forest of spaceships. I'm like, okay, that's a weird forest, but all right, cool. Yeah, and then we just start on the second issue with the Will saying basically like, yeah, I'm not going to go after them because the what's her name, the stock is, once she's on it, they're dead for sure. And I thought that was cool. That kind of like built her up. Like, what is that? What is the stock? And it's stock like I'm stalking you. Like like I'm gonna kill you. Not like stock of corn. That would be.
So yeah, so we stock.
It's all made of corn. But we see how dangerous this planet is because right away in the beginning of this second issue, we see the parents, Marco and Alana, and the baby, and they're wrapped up in vines that are attacking them, and Marco uses some magic to get out of it. So, he's using magic every now and then. Like if it's a dark place, he'll like pop up a light out of nowhere and stuff, So he's coming in handy with his stuff. But then they are, it's the first week or it's the first days of their child being born. So they haven't slept in the last 72 hours, I believe it is. And they just fall asleep on a rock. And then we see like in the wilderness around them, there's these glowing eyes. So it seems like it's fairly, a bad place, like a dangerous place to fall asleep. But that's kind of like an interesting. That was one of the things I was like, okay, I see what you're doing because it's like false danger. It's only danger because we know, like, oh, if these evil eyes are staring at them, obviously they're evil, right? But then later on, it's not bad things. It's like these ghost kids that were killed in the wars, and they like part of their races or their cultural, I guess their ethnicity. Part of their ethnicity is, or like their people's thing is like they die and then they're ghosts on this planet. Like that's just part of them, like as a people or whatever. So like all these kids are dead and they're just in the forest and they will like kill people or harass people, but they see how much the parents love the baby, and that's like, aw, we'll be nice to you. So they kind of like help him out later. But just as like, just before we find that out about the eyes and the evil kids or whatever, the ghost kids, the stock shows up and we see that she is it's like a Venus de Milo Spider Woman, basically is what it looks like. And by Spider Woman, I don't mean like Jessica Drew. I mean like an actual arachnid lady. And this is one of the things I was like, it looks like something's killing the children. Like, you haven't read that, have you? Okay, there's like a big spider monster in the first, like, I don't know if it's the whole volume, or the whole series, but in the first, like, 3 volumes, there's like a big spider monster thing. And it looks a lot like this. Like same eyes and same body type once her legs come out and shit. But yeah, this is a mature book, so she's got a female upper torso, so her tits are out. Just for funsies, I guess. But that's why I was like, she's a spider human. Like that's weird. All right, I don't get it, but whatever. She could have just been like a big ass spider. But I don't know.
Was that the thing you were most excited about in this? That the
spider tits?
Not just spider tits, but as we go forward in this, there is actually much more nudity than anticipated.
Is there? I didn't even notice it.
Oh, okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I guess I was paying attention closer than Matt was.
I will say this. No, not paying attention. I will say it didn't really register as anything because it's not there for like to be tantalizing. It's just like, yeah, okay, it's a shirtless Spider Woman. That's not like attractive or anything. It's not like it mattered to the story or anything, other than that's just what her character looks like. So it was like, okay. So I didn't really like register any of that stuff. There was no like salacious details or anything. So
you didn't have naked Spider Woman dreams later.
I did not. No, I did not dream about naked. I did not dream of large naked Spider Women. So, but when they meet her, like Marco is like, all right, my name's Marco. Like we're all whoa
I'm so sorry.
dogs.
Sorry about that. My dogs were barking. Someone ran
No,
the
it's
door off.
fine. Those yappy bastards. Always barking at. And my dog does it too. Anytime anyone comes to the door or even like makes a noise outside, it's like the barking is on. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so Marco goes up to this Spider Woman and he's like, "Hey, like my name's Marco. Just trying to take care of my ladies, my daughter and my wife. You know, like we're all friends. Like I don't want to fight or anything." And this is stupid. He just like it makes it seem like he walks up to her, and then of course she's like, "Oh, they call me the stock," and then he looks confused by that, and then she like shoots out of her mouth this weird spike thing, and I don't know if it's poisonous or whatever. It only hits him in the shoulder, but it seems like
It looks like it's got barbs on it, so I assumed it was like poisonous.
okay. Do barbed things usually have poison?
Yeah, I mean, usually if I think
Oh, okay.
a lot of animals, if they have some kind of barbs, it's because they're trying to get it to stick in you to deliver something.
Okay, I don't know. I mean, she is a Spider Woman, so that makes sense. But it's not like Shelob where she like stabs you with a stinger or something. So it's like it's like a weird. She has a tongue, but she has this second tongue that's barbed. This is like a weird thing that shoots out of her mouth. So it hits him, and he goes down immediately. And then it turns out so like I should say the Spider Woman has a dress over her bottom, and it looks like it's her bottom half, and it looks like it's covering like an old school like Western dress, like with a bustle and stuff. Like it looks gigantic, but it's actually covering her giant spider thorax or whatever, and all her legs. And so when she like whips the dress up, and we see that all of her arms and legs are holding different weapons, shotguns. One of them looks magical. There's axes and knives and shit, and so she's ready for damage. And the wife, obviously the stock is there to get the baby, and who cares about the parents? But the wife is like, Alana is like, okay, I'm gonna kill this baby. I would rather kill my baby so that you don't get her, because then she'll be like with you guys, and you'll raise her horribly and test on her and shit. I'd rather kill her than have you get her, and like basically calls the stock's bluff, and then I don't know. Some weird noises start happening. I think this is the ghosts, right? The ghost kids.
Yeah.
So the ghost kids start going like woo in the woods, and like that scares the stock away before like Alana has to do the bad thing and shoot the baby in the head with her stun gun.
I did like that. It like when she cocks it, the the stock is like, "Damn, bitch, you gonna kill your own baby?"
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
There was a
it
little.
makes sense to me. That makes perfect sense because it's like, yeah, she's like a mother who loves her child, and it's better for the child to not grow up with you and not me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not giving you this baby. And that's happened before in movies, right? Like, or in stories where you're like, oh, they like in 28 Days Later, or like virus movies, you'll see like, oh, the parents just gave all the kids Kool-Aid or something that was laced with something, and so they didn't have to die horribly and live in this terrible world. So
For sure. I just specifically liked her reaction because they literally, she's like, "Damn, bitch."
yeah, yeah. Well, see, like that's the kind of like humor that like is in a lot of sci-fi or even like comic book movies nowadays, and like maybe because when this came out it wasn't as prevalent, but like it's kind of like when you watch Firefly now or something, or like Serenity. It's like that humor was very unique at the time, or you watch Buffy, right? That humor was very unique to Joss Whedon and those kind of things at the time. But then that humor became the thing that people do. So now it's kind of like
That's
overplayed. So I would have rather seen it be like just a really tense moment where like she's gonna call her bluff, and maybe it builds up a little more than like like damn bitch, and then like ooh, ghost people. So and then like, oh, I'm running away. Like Spider Woman runs away. I don't know. It was kind of like anticlimactic to me, but once the spider lady runs away, we find out that the ghosts are just the ghosts of dead kids who kind of look human. like a lot of the things in this book that are alien and weird. They're supposed to be weird, but they just look human. Like these ghosts have big ears. That's about how weird they are. They have like chimp looking ears or something, right? Like they stick out too far. They got Dumbo ears. These are the Dumbo kids, right? But of course they're the ghosts of dead kids, so they have like bodies torn in half and like heads ripped open and stuff. So like that's shocking, I guess. But you know, it's one of the things that I was like, what? Like, why is this? Why is everybody so human in this alien book, or this book about alien peoples getting along and stuff? So, I don't know. I like my weird shit. I like my sci-fi to be weird. I like fantasy to be hard fantasy. You know. So, did you think this bordered on fantasy at all with like magic and stuff? Because it's sci-fi, but there's magic and people with like, horns on their head and shit.
Yeah, it felt like it was kind of like a cross between sci-fi and fantasy. Because, yeah, I mean, some of the creature-esque things like that are incorporated a little bit into this, like the cat that tell if you're lying or not.
Right,
Like,
right.
it borders a little bit of both.
Right, but obviously magic is in it, right? Because he uses magic and his people can use magic. So that is a little bit of an interesting cross between genres. Some people hate that shit. Like you were saying earlier, like Martin Starr, like I think before we recorded, Martin Starr from Party Down, when he's like, dragons are fantasy. I like hard sci-fi. There's none of that magic or dragons in hard sci-fi. Like
That's true, and that's true. Sometimes having both of those, like, how can you have like magic and have, yeah, like, sci-fi technology? But then I mean, like, Star
this
Wars has
comes
the
from Star
Force.
Wars with the Force.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was gonna say I'm never too hard on that.
It can happen, but Star Wars, the Force is pretty subtle, and it's only like a certain type of people that have it. Whereas this seemed like magic can do pretty much whatever you want if you're good at it. Like you can call forth weapons and tear people apart and shit, and like create fire and whatever. But like, but at the same time, there's like TV face, right? There's like all that, or TV head, screen heads. I keep forgetting what I call them, screen heads. So this should be a screen head movie next to cone heads, right? There's two alien races battling.
Yes.
That's a new SNL sketch they should do, because that seems like a new SNL sketch for sure. And yes, oh, your dog's barking again. Yeah, so like that's my biggest thing, or one of my big things about this is like the sci-fi elements are mixed with fantasy. There's just a lot of crossover, but it's like light versions of all those things. So once again, this is for accessibility, I think, right? Like anybody who's not into those genres can pick it up and enjoy it. And anyone who is into it, if they're willing to not be super critical, will also probably enjoy it. And that's why I think this was so popular. A lot of people love this book. And I get why it is a crossover hit, because it seems very accessible to everybody. But anyway, back to the story. Marco is injured still from the barbed tongue of the spider lady. And so Alana asks one of the ghost girls, what's her name again? Isabel.
Isabel.
Yeah. Isabel is the name of the main ghost. And she says, I will help you because I know where he can get help. He needs some like a snowflake, or he says he needs a snowflake for magic, for some spell or whatever, in order to heal himself. And she's like, where am I supposed to get that? We're in the middle of the jungle. And Isabel's like, hey, I know where you can get it. We just got to go to this place. But before you do, you got to promise me, or you got to let me do something for me to let you go there. And that is, I'm going to bond with your child's soul. Is that what it is? I'm going to spirit bond with your child?
Spirit bond, yeah. Yes.
Which
I need that.
was a bit intense,
quick
right?
soul bond.
Yeah, and this was one of the things I'm like, why did this need to be in here? Because like I don't want to spoil. I guess we'll spoil it. Fuck it. She gets like evaporated later on by very quickly out of nowhere.
That's supposedly the only way she could get off the planet, because her soul is entwined there.
Right, but why? I mean, like, why did you need to have any of that in there if she's just going to get killed initially?
So she can be cannon fodder later.
Well, yeah, but they could have just said, okay, I'll go with you. I'll show you where the snow is.
Hey, I don't know. I didn't
You don't
write-
need to have that in there, right? That's all I'm saying. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she comes back later and like she just disapparated when she was in the middle of a fight and someone hit her with whatever. So I could be wrong, but regardless. So in the background, while they're, helping him now get the snowflake so he can heal himself, so then they can eventually get to the rocket ship forest, we cut to Prince Screenhead, and he is interviewing a cellmate of Marco, who also knew who Alana was because she was the guard in their cell. And he's asking about a romance novel that apparently in his research he found out that Alana reads romance novels and very much like the Fabio kind, right? So like imagine the 90s stereotypical romance novel. And I guess they're saying that like the reason why she was willing to like betray her people and even her, country and planet and everything to be in love is, they didn't say this explicitly, but to me it was like, oh, she is a romantic. And so like she wants this fantasy of romance so much that when it looked like this was something that was happening to her in real life, she was like, I'm all in. I'm going for it because she's played it out in her head, in fantasy wise a bunch of times reading all these books, right? Is that what you got from it?
Yeah, that's what I felt.
Okay. Yeah, so like I mean that was just like the main plot point that they wanted to put forward is that she reads romance novels and that's why she's so in love with this guy that she met fairly soon. She met him like quickly and then they got in a relationship quickly and then they got pregnant and stuff. So also I didn't know did you know how fast their relationship happened? Because she's pregnant right at the beginning of this. They have her on video being pregnant in the cell areas. But like you would think if she's pregnant, she's not going to be a guard. So like, do her people get pregnant in like a week? And
I think it was even faster because it says that she was only his guard for.
Right, they do say that, right? I thought maybe I was going crazy because I'm like, I guess they just gestate in like a couple days or a week or something because she wasn't there very long with him.
No, yeah, it was really quickly. So
yeah,
it surprised me too for sure. I was like, oh gosh, like I expected them. I guess even though they look more human, yeah, that's the one thing that's not. They get pregnant real quick.
yeah. So I don't know. That was just one of the like interesting story things. I'm like, okay, I guess they just needed to make it happen, and so they wrote that in. So, but while we find that out, then we cut back to Alana and the ghost girl Isabel, and they're going up the mountain to the snowy area, and then we cut to in the background we're seeing the Spider Woman. She's running from all these monsters in the woods that I guess came out after her. I'm like, she's a spider crazy mercenary. Like, doesn't she have weapons? But she's getting chased by like boars. I'm like, they're big boars, but I don't know. I feel like she should be able to handle them. And she does handle them. Like while she's on the phone, she's like, I need help. She calls the Will and says like, I need your help because, these two are hard to catch basically. And I'm going to need your help. So it's like, I don't know if she's all that. I don't see why she would need that much help and why she would call the Will, but she did. And basically the Will is like still in love with her. They had a relationship before. We find that out right as they're calling. He's like, basically he's in love with her. So he's willing to go help her out. But also like in this issue, we find out the little things about the Will that, I guess define his character and his morals straightforward. Like in this one, because he goes to this planet called Sextillion. It's not a planet. I guess it's like a pleasure ship or something.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's called Sextillion, which could be just, a very large, number, I guess, right? But then it's actually sex like we're going to have sex, right? Like, so it's like a whorehouse basically in the middle of space. And when he goes in there, there's like, very like I guess the normal thing you would think of for like a regular legal sex place, but then when he gets there and he's like the lady's here, whatever, and then some guy comes out, I guess he's like the maitre d or whatever, he's like, oh, why don't you come back to the like secret place? And then it turns out he's got like child sex slaves and stuff. And then we see the Will like crush the dude's head because he's so disgusted.
He's like, she's fucking 6. She's a child, man.
Yeah.
Just,
and he's
that
like,
was
well,
a,
you kill children. Why wouldn't you fuck them? And it's like, I got a code. God damn it.
I did like that. Yeah. Like he was like, fuck this. And then he like just takes his hands and squishes the guy's head.
Yeah. I was like, wow, that guy's got a really weak skull because he just does a big clap on the guy's face and it explodes his head. So,
or the Will is really strong. We don't know yet.
But I mean, he looks like a human, so I'm just going by what he looks like. He doesn't look buff or anything.
That's true. Well, he has a cape, so that makes me think he's really strong.
He has a cape. All right. I guess your logic kind of makes sense, but it is comics, so whatever. But then in the background we're seeing, they're in this like Alana and Isabel have brought Marco to the snowy place. They're getting snow. He does a spell. He wakes up. He's like, oh my God. But while he was waking up, Alana was talking to him and he's like, oh, Gwendolyn. And she's like, who the fuck is Gwendolyn? And so, yeah, he had a wife or a fiance, I guess, from before. And her name was Gwendolyn. It doesn't really play into like this storyline too much other than it starts a fight between them. Because once he wakes up, she's like, who the fuck is Gwendolyn? How come you never told me about Gwendolyn? And he's like, well, because you said you didn't care about our past, experiences or whatever, past relationships. And she's like, well, I don't know. It was your fiance or whatever. So I don't know. It was kind of.
She said she was talking about hookups, but fiance is a little different. And I mean, that makes a little more sense. Like,
I guess. I don't know.
Well, look, how many sexual partners you have? Okay, it doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't matter or whatever. Okay, well. But you were engaged to someone and like, planned to be wed. That's different for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's different, but I don't think it matters if he never married her, right? Then it was just a more serious girlfriend.
And then you find out that the rings that they have were also her rings.
Well, that's true, I guess. Yeah, definitely. I could see women being offended that you're using someone else's rings, but
I would be offended. I don't think
John.
this is a women thing. I think it depends. It depends what you're.
I could care less, so that's.
That means you do care a little.
I couldn't care less. I forgot the int at the end of couldn't. So.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. So like they have a little bickering argument session about relationships before and whatever. And also I should say that the Will, he basically said like, no, I'm good, even though he's in love with the stock. He's like, I'm good. And then he went into this sex dungeon place. And then the reason why he ends up taking the job and going to the planet is because he needs money, because he takes the girl, the 6-year-old out of that sex place. And then he's like, I want to buy, like the guy or one of the owners of that place is like, hey, you can't leave with her. She's my property. I own her. You can buy her if you want. And he's like, well, how much is she? And it was like a shit ton of money. So that's why he's going to end up taking the place or taking the job to get them. So finally, we're back where Marco is healthy again, or he's back, he's back on his feet. And right as they're done arguing, a spaceship shows up and is like, halt, we found you. And so like her people come out, they're the bad guys or whatever, the people that work for the screen faces and screen heads. I want to call them faces now. Screen heads. So this is where we see him use his sword against them. And he like chops off their arms and shit. And then like he doesn't kill them though, I guess technically. He just punches them and he kicks them and then he chops off some arms. Headbutts them with his horns. But she's like, he's gonna kill them. He's like, fuck it, I'm gonna kill him. So we see like he's got a bit of a violent past that maybe he's not letting out fully, and that's maybe why he took this vow of peace, because he is like a hardcore, straight up murderer, like killer. It's like super killer, but like we haven't seen that fully because he's like, I'm gonna cut their heads off. So you get a flash of potentially his dark side. But she is able to stop him. She shoots him with the stun gun and he falls down. And she's like, no, you can't. I'm not going to let you kill someone. You took a vow, whatever. So um, they do that. And then as they're like getting ready to leave, they steal the ship that those people had. They fly off. Now they can reach the rocket forest quickly because they have a flying ship. So they can fly on the planet to this place easier than obviously walking. So in the meantime, the stock has caught up to where they left the soldiers tied up with their arms cut off and shit. And she's like, "This is so weird," you know. And it, like she's talking to the Will, who said like, "I'm gonna meet you over there because I'm taking the job with you." And then as she's talking to him, all of a sudden, TV head or screen head shows up, and he's like, "Hey, don't move," because he's like, he doesn't know who she is, I guess, even though he hired her, but like he didn't hire her directly, so I guess this makes sense. But I thought this was funny. I don't know. What do you think? Where like he shows up and he shoots her because he doesn't know who she is and he kills her.
Yeah, because it's like I think his one of the people that was like she's reaching for something. He's just like shoot first.
Yeah, it was like an interesting thing. So
yeah, we didn't see what she was reaching for, but I mean it could have been anything, but yeah, she's dead because he shoots his arm turns into like to some kind of like cannon and like just blasts a hole straight through her body.
You know what? I didn't even realize that she was reaching for something, but yeah, in the art they do show one of her back arms reaching for something. Because she's got 8 arms or whatever, right? So
yeah,
I didn't see that. I thought they were just like
it was a gun.
I just thought it was like cops shooting people. They always say like they're reaching for something and then they shoot them. So that's what I thought it was. But they don't show anything in her hands or even underneath. Well, I guess on her torso she has like knives and shit strapped to her, so it could have been one of those. But she dies and the Will is left on the phone being like, "Hello, I guess I'll meet you there. Are we done with this conversation?" And then, so we get to the last issue, and we come to the forest of rockets. And when they get there, it's burned down, and they're like, "What the fuck? This is not what you promised, Ghost Girl Isabel." And Isabel's like, "Oh, don't worry. This is my planet, and like to fuck with people, we like basically put what do they call those? Like a hiding spell or something on stuff. So like." The people we don't want to see these things can't see them, but then she like lifts her hands and reveals a giant tree spaceship, and it's like a wooden spaceship, so it's like different kind of technology, right? And then we cut to the Will showing up and finding the stock dead, and in this, I guess it's like, or no, he doesn't find her dead. The prince robot face, or what's his name? Prince Robot
the fourth.
The fourth, thank you. I'm gonna say it wrong every time, just for fun now.
Okay, screen head.
Screen head. Screen face. But yeah, so he picks up the phone and he's like, "Who's this?" And the Will is like, "I'm the Will. I was talking to my lady friend," and he's like, "Oh, she's dead now." And the Will is like horribly shaken by this, and I feel like. I don't remember if they show it yet, but like, or if they say it in this volume, but I feel like he's going to turn very easily and go after Robot Prince the Fourth, because of this scene right here. But, yeah. So anyway, then we cut back to the rocket ship that's made of trees. And before Marco gets on, he's like, "I'm never going to take any or do any violence with this blade again. Violence just breeds violence." He's very like Martin Luther King about violence. And so he breaks it on his knee. He breaks the blade. And it shoots out like a bunch of magic as he does, because it was like an heirloom from his family, I guess. And like centuries old heirloom full of death and magic from that death, and I'm assuming. But then the rocket ship takes off, and like no one knows where they're supposed to go, or where they don't really have like a place they're saying they're going to go. But when they ask, "Oh, where should we go?" Alana's like, "Why don't we go to this place called Quietus?" And it's like, "Oh, okay, I get that. Seems like just as good of a place as any, right?" But then it turns out that Prince Robot the Fourth is reading her romance novel to figure out maybe he can find out some things about her. And he sees that the author is from a place called Quietus. So she was stupid and decided to go there, but now he knows that she's going there because he read the basic information about the author.
Literally
So,
on the on the novel.
From her favorite book series that is obviously inspiring this whole thing in the first place. Probably shouldn't go there, but you know, it's the story, right? So so they're in space, they're heading to Quietus, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of the spaceship, two people appear, and they're horned people, and they magically, appear, and they use some magic on Isabel, the ghost girl, and she basically explodes, and then Alana comes out of the shower, and she has her little stun gun, and she stuns one of them, and then we find out as one of them takes off their, because Marco yells like "stop it" in his language, and then one of them takes off their helmet, and he's like, "Son," and it's like, "Oh, it's your dad." So these are Marco's parents, and they show up, and he's like, "Check out my child," and then that's like how it ends. It ends. The last line of the comic is, "And that's how my grandparents came to live with us." So, yeah, and that's the end of the comic of this first volume. So, John, what would you give it, and what did you think?
So I have to admit, for one that I have been like psyched about, I was like, finally, we're gonna get to read this. It's been on my radar. I've been interesting little tidbits from it that looked cool to me that I was interested in. Like, yes, I was let down. Unfortunately,
John didn't like a comic. I'm shocked.
See, I don't like everything, man. But so as much as I didn't like it overall. As much as I didn't like, it took me forever to get into and like to like feel like the story was going somewhere for me to be interested in. By that time, I was like, meh, okay. And then also like the cliffhanger wasn't as big of a cliffhanger for me to like end the first volume to be like, oh, what happens? Like I was like, I was already over it by then. Like I might like read the synopsis of the next like one or two and see if it sounds interesting, but like there wasn't enough to keep me like going. The character designs weren't, like we said, they weren't like
Unique or special.
unique enough for me to be excited about. I did, like I said, like one of the characters I saw that I guess comes up is like a bipedal seal, and I was like, that's cool. But like we didn't get like any like super out there characters in this except the stock. She's like a spider lady thing. Okay, that was cool. The the weird sex planet thing, like there were a lot of weird creatures on that, right?
That's my favorite part.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say.
Not for the reasons you think. That was the scene. No. I see. I totally just was like, yeah, this is par for the course in a sex planet or a sex ship or whatever. So I wasn't even like paying attention to the sexual drawings, but there was a lot of nudity and people in weird sexual positions and stuff in the vanilla part of the spaceship.
There were a lot of dicks and boobs on those pages.
And dildos and sure.
And, yeah. It felt like that Rick and Morty episode where they go into the brain of the teacher, and then there's like a deeper level, and it's like a sex dungeon.
Yeah. Sure.
But anyway, yeah, but like it got edgy sometimes and creative a little bit sometimes, but
kind of like normie edgy though,
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, like then like this one race, like you said, it's like they're just people with horns, but they're all still humanoid-esque.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are still.
Yeah, there ain't no Yodas, there ain't no Chewbacca's, there ain't no,
Yeah, there wasn't enough of those characters to get me, I guess, like, ooh, like what's going on here? Who are these? And then, like you said, like they all could pretty much understand each other. There wasn't like someone who had to translate or like I don't know. It didn't grip me as much. I'm a little pickier on my sci-fis too, I'll be honest. Like I like Star Wars, I like Star Trek. There's a smattering of other ones in there, like Fifth Element and whatnot. But in general, I'm usually pretty picky with my sci-fi overall.
See, even the Fifth Element, that's pretty, accessible. Cool. But there was like a world building aspect where the aliens looked really interesting, and they all had different things going on. And like one of the things I loved about the beginning of the Fifth Element is, it's in Egypt or whatever, and then those big weird like turtle aliens come out. And I'd never seen an alien like that before. And I'm like, what are those suits? Or is that what the alien actually is? Or
Yeah.
what's going on? And, it's like that kind of shit. I love those questions that it throws in your mind when you don't understand what you're even seeing. Whereas this, I was like, I get it. Like this could take, like I said, could take place literally on Earth in the middle of the Civil War, and you'd have the same story, right? It would just be like less, I guess. Well, I guess you could make it have racism by having it be about like a black Union soldier and a white woman
From
who
the South.
was from the South, yeah, or whatever, So,
Yeah, and they have a child together, and it's like,
exactly.
how could this? Yeah, I totally could see that. So yeah, like it wasn't for as much as it was hyped, as much as I had an interest in it. It left me hanging on a lot of it. Like I didn't feel like, oh, this was really amazing, or like it didn't give me like, oh, I want to continue the story. It got me interested a bit. I like the Will. I definitely was curious more about him. The stock was cool until she died, and I did like the robot heads. I did like the screen.
They were the more interesting characters just because they looked funny. Although one thing was interesting about them is there would like be random flashes of like little pictures on their screens, and I was always like, is that what they're thinking about? Or like they don't explain that. See, and because they didn't explain it and it was like a weird thing, I was kind of more intrigued by them, right? So
Yeah, but yeah, for the most part, it didn't suck me in enough, and so I take that into account. For the art again was good. It never blew me away, but it was good. It was serviceable throughout the
yeah.
whole thing.
Mhm.
And none of it ever felt like rushed or like bad. So and then like I said, there was some adult pages for sure. So overall, I'm gonna go. This is gonna go to our baseline one, man, and like I I
It's better than
want.
it's the same as Hush, or you liked Hush more,
I was gonna say I like Hush more, and that's because it's Batman, so it's got a little bit of an edge.
right?
Dare I say this is a 4.5?
A 4.5. Ooh, John with a scathing 4.5.
We had to maybe really think about it, and yeah,
You
it's.
just
I mean,
broke
it's not
Otaku Mike's heart, John. That's all I know. Because he was loving this book, so he was really excited that we were going to read it.
I feel terrible.
We're sorry, Otaku Mike. We can't help what we like or don't like, but I will say this: I ended up liking this book by the end. I had a lot of qualms with it, and at first I was kind of forcing myself to read it. Like I said, I went in with a contrarian attitude, which actually puts me, I think, in a good judgmental place or a good place to judge it because I'm not, excited by the hype. Everybody's hyping it up and everything. So I have no like bias as far as that's concerned. I'm just going in like, well, everybody says this is great. Let's see if it really is. So if you can turn me from that point of view and make me like something, then that means it was like a solid story, right? So I always like it when I'm pleasantly surprised when I go into something skeptically and then it ends up being like really good and like my favorite thing or something. So this was not my favorite thing, but I also didn't hate it or anything. I thought it was pretty good by the end. I was interested in it. And like I would continue reading if say I was bored and like I didn't have anything else on the reading list, or maybe I was off somewhere, traveling or something. I'm in the airport and I'm like, oh yeah, Saga. I'll just read the second volume of that. Like it wouldn't be something I'm going to actively go pick up, but I didn't hate it by the end. I got more into it probably by the time the Will was like, I'm going to save this little girl. That's where I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. I like the Will. I like the cat, the cat that can tell if you're lying. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one a 6. I think it was solid. Like it is solid and it is very accessible. It's not for me. Like it's not to my taste as far as sci-fi, but I can see why a lot of people like it, and I do get why a lot of people are into it. And I think that's good. I think that's a good thing that a lot of people find this, because this could lead to other things, right? Like people start with this, just like Why the Last Man. That was one of the biggest sellers for like newbies in the comic book store, because someone would come in and say, I read this, I liked it, not that I like not I about Why the Last Man. They would say I read this thing, or even they come in and they go, I've never read comics. What should I read? And I go, what kind of books do you like? And they say, or what kind of movies do you like? And they're like, oh, I like this and that. And I'm like, okay, well, a good one that like doesn't need any like starter pack or anything. You don't need to have hundreds of years of continuity or whatever to understand it. Is Why the Last Man. Just pick up the first volume, and almost 100% of people could just pick that up, read it, and finish it. Like they pretty much were then stuck on that series until it ended. And so this is another one of those where I think because there's not a lot of hard accessibility to it, even though it's sci-fi and fantasy and everything, people can just pick it up, they get it, they can consume it, they have fun. So I understand why people like it. And I think those books are important, just not to my taste. For the most part. Like I said, there were things I did like about it, and I would read the second volume if I was bored or something and needed something to fill the time. But I'm not going to go actively search this one out because I just feel like there are better series that I would enjoy more, starting from the beginning and reading. So, and there's always books, that I'm going to read. So like there's always something in the list for me. Right. So,
Yeah, so I was gonna say you say that, but then like I feel like you're always gonna have a backlist. So I don't know if you ever will get back around to
well, John,
this.
that's the secret. I was trying to be, I was trying to be nice. And it just turns out I'm never going to get to this because
Look, for fans of this, I get it. You can see why it's exciting. So perfect example I will give this to is my wife loves sci-fi and loves fantasy, and will watch almost every single one of those new shows that comes out on sci-fi or Netflix or whatever. The 300, the this, the that, the. I mean, to me, they're all the same, and they're all kind of like I've seen this before, I've heard
weak,
this, and
weak
I'm
sci-fi.
not a bit like I mean Matt gets on me all the time. Like I love a lot of things, like I don't know something about when it comes to the sci-fi fantasy genre. Like that's where I start to get a little more critical for my tastes. This might be for you, but
Your
this
inner
one is
Matt
not.
comes out and you get judgmental.
Yes, this is where Matt has imprinted on me the most, and I'm like, I don't like it. It stinks. Like
It
I don't know. It
stinks.
just, it wasn't as much for me. Like I still think that character I saw is cute, the little seal. Maybe I'll read the next one because I think he's in it.
Right. It turns out
But
he's
but
in like volume 10 or something. You're gonna take a while to get there.
no. I read the synopsis of
Oh,
the
okay.
version I did honestly, and it says that he's on the quietly planet. So I was like, okay.
Quietus.
I was like, oh,
Quietus.
he's in the next one. I was like, okay, maybe I'll see. Just
Oh,
because
okay.
he's really fucking cute. There's the pop of him is him in like little like a onesie pajamas, and he's holding an axe, and I was like, oh, that's fucking adorable. But again, that one thing for me to hold on to be like, is this going to be good? And then like the Will and his cat being cool was like not enough for me to be like, yes.
Right.
So
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, we that's an interesting. I was like, oh, John's gonna eat this shit up. Like, and I think it's fun. Very rarely do we agree that something wasn't as good as people said, and then also like our usually we line up pretty close with our ratings, and you were way lower than me on this one, so that was fun. Um, but yeah, so this, if you didn't know, I forgot to say at the beginning, but this was a voted on by our patrons. So every second episode of every month, the patrons vote on what we're going to do, and this was the winner. And so thank you guys for voting. We love y'all, and we hope you like it. But if you would like to be a Patreon member and vote on the second episode of every month, and also get an exclusive every month, like an exclusive episode that's only for patrons, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books. And speaking of that, the exclusive, we had something planned, but whenever there's like a poll and there's a second place, because sometimes everybody votes for the same thing. So this poll had a second place, so we're gonna do the second place book for the exclusive, so that we make all our patrons happy. And we're gonna do Coraline for the exclusive this month, which will be out next week.
Another weird family for sure, and
Yep.
I'm excited to see this graphic novel adaptation of it because I just read the story recently. So
Have you watched the movie?
no, we're gonna watch that soon.
Oh, okay, cool. So I've read the book and seen the movie, so it'll be interesting. I like Pete Craig Russell, who did the art for the comic, so that should be good. So yeah, I'm excited about that. It'll be interesting. And then the starting in December, our first one for that month, we're doing winter themed books, but maybe not the winter themed books you think. At least for the first one, we're doing a book called Friday, the First Day of Christmas, and Friday is a crime series by Ed Brubaker, who we've done a couple of his books on here. We did Gotham. Did we do Gotham Central? No, we didn't do Gotham.
Nope.
We did Reckless for sure.
Yeah, Reckless is good.
Reckless, and I feel like we've read something else by him, but I can't remember. Anyway, he's one of my favorite authors for
Did he
comics.
do Monsters too? Is that the one?
No, that's Barry Windsor Smith.
Barry Windsor Smith. Okay, cool. I know that's one. That's another like crime one you want to do real soon.
It's not really a crime.
No. Okay.
No,
Maybe I didn't remember. I just know
it's
that's
fucked
one
up
you wanted to
historical fiction.
Oh, okay.
But it's like a mouse kind of book. It's very heavy. But yeah. So anyway, Ed Brubaker writes that. So I don't know. I haven't read it yet. It's one of his newer books. So I think it's a crime book. That takes place during Christmas or winter time. So we're doing that for the first podcast in December, and then of course we're gonna have our Christmas themed voted on episode, our poll, and then we'll do. And then I know what we're gonna do for our exclusive, but I won't spoil it yet. We'll say that.
We won't spoil it, but we'll probably be really nice and sweet and give a Christmas gift to everyone, even not our patrons. But you're going to listen to it on Patreon.
Yes, we're gonna release the exclusive on Patreon, but it's gonna be open for everybody, just because it's Christmas and we're feeling generous because everybody was good this year. So
yes, everyone was good.
Everyone was good. So with that being said, once again, if you'd like to join our Patreon, it's patreon.com/planes, trains, and comic books, all one word. And we will see you guys on the next one.
On the next one.
Bye.